Christian Whitehead is a big part of the Sonic community. Originally known for Sonic fan games, then leading official remakes of 1, 2, and CD, and then even a fully new classic Sonic game, Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania was a complete critical success, being seen as one of the best Sonic games ever, which led to that team officially forming Evening Star, with plans on making original games. I remember seeing them announce on their Twitter that they're working on a 3D platformer ages ago, and saying that to a really good friend of mine, JustAnotherReviewer. Speaking of which, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm JustAnotherReviewer, also known as Jules, and I'm super pumped to be talking about Penny's Big Breakaway, which both Brendan and I have been keeping our eye on for a while now, given the fact that we're both big fans of the Sonic franchise and of 3D platformers in general. Although, looking at the rest of Brendan's channel, he might beat me out on that second claim, and maybe the first two.
Yeah, I do have a clear favorite genre. Jules and I met through our shared love of Sonic, and even went to the Sonic Symphony together a couple months ago, which was amazing, by the way, high recommendation. So we thought doing a collab review on a Sonic adjacent game like Penny's Big Breakaway made a lot of sense, so that's what we're doing now. This game has a very goofy story, and I love it. Penny goes to this talent show thing to show her amazing yo-yo skills and accidentally shreds off the clothes of the Emperor. This immediately angers him and makes her a wanted criminal, so now she's on the run. Mostly from penguins. I love that the penguins are even a gameplay mechanic in this game, immediately killing you if you get too many of them on you at once. It's like how the moon in Majora's Mask is not only a story thing but also a core gameplay mechanic, but... penguin? Okay, very loose connection, but that's where my head is at right now. But yeah, the story is not deep, obviously, but it's fun and full of charming moments, and I find the cutscenes themselves to be really charming too. That's basically all I would want from a game like this anyway. Because this game is a platformer, specifically a momentum-based 3D platformer, and if you know me, you'll look at this and immediately understand why I was interested in this game, because this right here, this literally could not be more my thing.
I totally agree. I love any game that allows for a smooth player experience and strong sense of flow, which Penny is basically all about. Rolling up and down slopes on Penny's yo-yo is super fun, although I did wish the game had more half-pipes. It was really fun to go back and forth on those things. Swinging on Penny's yo-yo is also really fun, although there is more of a learning curve to it, since it only really does much if you know exactly when to start and end the swing. Once you get it though, you can pull off some pretty neat tricks. Without Penny's yo-yo, though, her movement is sort of she's just kind of sluggish. I suppose this is the game's way of forcing you to use the yo-yo as much as possible, but since there are some platforming sections that don't work well with the yo-yo, thereby forcing you to just use Penny's abilities, it can slow the level down a bit.
Yeah, you really gotta use your yo-yo at all times to do anything fun. I personally do my best to never stop going fast but dashing forward and swinging around constantly, but there is the occasional time where you have to ride a platformer or wait for another. Knowing this game, there's probably a way to skip most of these, but I don't know them. Obviously, I could learn how to skip these without failing too often, and I will, and that is obviously a part of the challenge. I just think that if the game is going to encourage less experienced players to slow down, it'd be nice if Penny felt better at lower speeds. In general, I would describe the movement of this game to be like a combination of Super Mario 64 with its variety of moves you can chain together, and the classic Sonic games with its use of momentum. My Sonic brain kicks in and becomes happy whenever I see slopes of any kind, and I get especially excited when I see stuff like this. I cannot express to you how fun this is to me. Beyond that, you also have Penny's yo-yo throws, which you'll mainly use for hitting switches or swinging on poles or whatever. If you do it twice in quick succession, you'll do this dash forward, which is really useful, and you'll be doing it constantly. The game definitely wants you to use the right stick for these moves, which I can't understand why. That does allow you to do other moves at once, assuming you use the shoulder buttons instead of the face buttons. And it also allows you to throw the yo-yo in whatever direction you want, whenever you want. But I personally found that to be inaccurate. This might absolutely be a case where I just have to get used to it, but I personally found just using the X button and aiming where I wanted to throw the yo-yo with the left stick easier. I only ever want to use the right stick for the yo-yo if I want to spin it, or the rare case where I need to run by something I want to hit. I do respect the game for trying to have a more unique control scheme. I just found the more traditional control scheme to be more comfortable, and I never felt like I was being held back because of it.
Penny's yo-yo can also allow for additional abilities if you use certain power-ups, like swinging a hammer to break things or twirling really fast to fly upwards. Some of these power-ups are more interesting to use than others, mainly because some are just more versatile than others. While some are pretty explicit about what you have to do with them, for example, the hammer power-ups are usually located right next to a breakable wall or object, others, like the wrecking ball and motorcycle power-ups, modify Penny's movement on a more fundamental level, allowing you to crash through things or roll really fast, respectively. I found these sorts of power-ups to be more fun since they allowed for more interesting challenges in the level design.
Yeah, those two are easily the best. Barreling through stuff just feels so good, and I love going at top speed, rolling on top of water or alongside the sides of buildings. I gotta talk about her swing though. I love this thing because it's so dependent on the timing in multiple ways. How fast you're going and when you let go of your swing has a dramatic effect on what your arc will be. So if you say fall into a swing and let go of it at just the right moment, you can make some pretty huge jumps doing that. There is so much potential in this, and is a huge reason why this game is as fun as it is. I cannot express to you enough how fun it is to see a big gap, think, wait, can I? And then you do it, and then you make it. Oh, it's so fun. You can even use it right after a dash to get more speed to take into a roll, which is pretty hard to get the timing just right, but it feels great when you do. But yeah, using this swing just right can be really hard. It is so easy to try to make one of those shortcuts and to just fling Penny straight down into the pit. I'm not saying that as a bad thing, no, I love that. I really love when movement is easy to fail like this because it makes it that much more satisfying to master. Beyond that, there's also this double jump swing thing. It doesn't give you a ton of height, but it's really good if you want to stop your momentum. You can also bounce in the yo-yo itself, which I found to be super useful if you do it up against a wall, basically climbing walls whenever you want. For as much as I love this game's movement, it did take a while for it to click with me. It's just not the easiest to learn, mainly because Penny is so slow when you're not doing anything special. But with enough time in the game, it will click, and yeah, it did for me. Eventually, it took a while, but it did click. Altogether, these moves are just so fun to chain together. The game attempts to reward you for doing this with a Tony Hawk-esque combo system, and yeah, this game has a combo system, and Pizza Tower, it is not. You get combos simply by chaining together moves without stopping or letting anything else get in the way. Doing this increases your score, which allows you to get better ranks. This sounds fine on paper, but they clearly did not put much thought into this because you can literally do the same handful of moves in place on repeat and it's just as effective, possibly more so. Dude, literally do this at the end of each stage for a few minutes. Bam, highest rank guaranteed. They also have these podium things at the end of each level, with each tier giving you a higher and higher point potential from this minigame that plays afterwards. I actually love these because it's like the flagpoles in the Mario games, but way more fun. This game having such a strong emphasis on momentum and freeform level design gives you so many ways to approach these. You can do it in the intended ways, which are normally fun little challenges that will test you on your movement in this game. Or you can do other things like abuse the surroundings and launch Penny with her yo-yo straight to the top. And with just enough precision, you'll get it. These are legitimately great little challenges at the end of each level, but not so much the thing that happens right after. There are these little QuickTime event mini-games, and they're all exactly the same with no change of difficulty throughout the whole game, so I literally never fail these now. They're just QuickTime events, so they're not fun to begin with, and they're honestly pace breakers, especially in some of the bonus levels where they end up being longer than the levels themselves. The combo system and ranks are a very ignorable thing. Once you achieve the highest rank, you're no longer ranked on a level in all save files, oddly enough. And of course, you can intentionally fail these mini-games to get them over with right away, and you only get a concept art for getting high ranks to begin with. But there's no denying it could have been done so much better regardless. Maybe something as simple as placing a time limit that's mandatory if you want to get the highest rank to be good enough. So you couldn't just, do this. And just get rid of these yo-yo mini-games entirely. The different tiers is more than enough of an end-of-level bonus, and way more fun too.
I told myself I was gonna try not to make a ton of Sonic comparisons when talking about this game, but it really is just the easiest way to talk about it. Penny's level design is essentially what one might imagine a classic 2D Sonic game would be like in 3D, kind of like those fan games everyone was talking about in the late 2010s, like Sonic Utopia and all that. Not so much in its scale, those fan games were usually massive in size, but rather in the sense that the levels are designed primarily around momentum, rewarding players who have mastered the movement enough to really build speed with hidden areas and alternate paths. It's still somewhat linear though, but I get that it's hard to make giant sandbox levels like some people would probably fantasize about with a smaller team and budget, also while promoting a distinct player experience. After all, as cool as those Sonic fan games were, I always wondered how in the world anyone was supposed to know where the end of a level was, or be expected to actually appreciate the level design when massive areas could just be launched over. That being said, Penny definitely limits the player's freedom somewhat to ensure that you're moving towards the goal, and also probably so you can actually appreciate the level design the devs put so much effort into. But now that I've given some insight into the game's general level design philosophy, I'd like to give some deeper, more specific insight by talking more about the game's individual mechanics. As mentioned before, the levels are mostly momentum driven, so a lot of the level mechanics take advantage of Penny's yo-yo abilities. You have bars to swing on, poles to spin around on, slopes to roll on, etc. In addition to those base features, each world introduces its own unique mechanics that align with the world's theme. For example, in the bathhouse world, you're introduced to waves and diving boards. The waves put an interesting twist on Penny's rolling abilities, and the diving boards can be jumped on multiple times to build height, which can be used to access different areas. There are also different mechanics for the platforming segments of different worlds, but I won't talk about them that much since I didn't find them as interesting. They're usually just thematically appropriate floating objects to jump on, not really varying in any fundamental and therefore interesting way. However, getting more into level themes, as I mentioned, each world has unique mechanics that align with its visual theme. For example, I'm sure you can see how the diving boards and waves I talked about fit the bathhouse theme, which is the same kind of thinking seen in other levels too. It always makes a game feel more cohesive when its mechanics align with its aesthetic. My personal favorite was the library world. Thematically, it's got this liminal and dreamlike forgotten library vibe that really appeals to me. And to go along with that, the level uses books and shelves as part of its level design, which while making the game temporarily more platforming focused than momentum focused, I found to still be enjoyable.
I personally really like the theme to the second to last world, Gala Night. It's just the first world, Vanilla Town,
at night,
but I still really like it. I'm a big fan of when games like this show the same place at different times of day just on an inherent level, but I also like it from a storytelling perspective. This is where Penny was initially running from the law, and now she's coming back to take on the guy who put the warrant on her arrest to begin with. I just think that's neat. The final world, Editorium, is my personal favorite overall. I love the theming, the song itself is my favorite in the game, and I love the sense of flow and the amount of penguins that chase you down in this level. The penguins in this game make any given level feel more frantic, even if they're rarely actually a threat. I'm a huge fan of frantic feeling levels, and this being the final level throws so many of you at once, and I love it. The fact the music itself even picks up when you have any on you is such a good touch that only adds to that frantic feeling. There's also the Denizen dilemmas and showpieces. There's 3 of both in every level, with the Denizen dilemmas being quick favors for NPCs you'll find as you run through the levels, and the showpieces basically just being the star coins from the new Super Mario Bros. Games, usually being hidden or in some out-of-the-way place. Sometimes either of these even getting their own secluded level chunks. The Denizen dilemmas will have you do things like delivering an item from one guy to the other without going into the water or any penguins grabbing onto you. Another will have you collect all of one type of thing. Another will have you speed through rings, and all of these will normally be under a time limit. I'm not really a fan of some of these challenges. Most of them are fun, some are less so. There were probably too many of these delivery challenges that wanted me to go to someone that was on some far-off platform I didn't know of, so I would just continue with the level expecting to see them on the way, then the challenge would just automatically fail me after going too far away, making you have to go back to the previous checkpoint if you want another crack at it. I just think having something as simple as a crazy taxi arrow would probably be enough. There's another one that wants you to get a ton of points within a small space, which is super exploitable for reasons you already know. Also, there was one challenge where you just push some boxes, and that's it, and why? It's not fun and breaks the pace, which in this game where keeping your flow going is the most fun part. That's kind of an issue. Though most Denizen dilemmas and showpieces do allow you to keep your flow going and add extra challenge in trying to incorporate them into your runs, there's not too much of an incentive to actually do that, seeing how points are the only benefit to doing that, and once again, you know. But it can be fun if you decide not to break the very easy to break system. Oh yeah, you also get these coin things, use them for temporary upgrades, so I didn't buy a single thing. They exist entirely for score and 1 achievement as far as I'm concerned.
I definitely agree with this. My approach to the game was pretty casual. I didn't pressure myself to try and collect everything, since I figured the game would be more enjoyable if I focused more on maintaining my sense of momentum and speed. However, that doesn't mean I wouldn't look out for collectibles and extras here and there. And I definitely ran into this issue multiple times where I'd think I was heading towards the end goal of a delivery challenge only to find out I failed the mission. It's not the end of the world, but for a game that's designed to keep you moving forward, I think that maybe these challenges could have been thought out a bit more.
Yeah, that became my approach after not too long. I'm a completionist, so finishing a level and seeing I missed stuff and forcing myself to just move on was sickening. However, continuing to go after everything I can and refusing to play the next level until I do was definitely part of why this game took a bit to click. The moment I decided to prioritize keeping that flow going was when I started to really love this game. I'd recommend not worrying about any collectibles like Jules said and maybe go for them once you've already beaten the game. That's what I did, and I still had more fun just going fast, honestly. This game really is at its best when you're going fast. Which is why I'm so happy this game has a time attack mode. Time attack mode is the way to play this game, and is where most of my time will go into this game going forward now that I've actually gotten everything. The flow and speed this game has is my favorite part, as I've made clear in this video, and this being time attack mode obviously focuses on that and only that. There's no Denizen dilemmas, Denizen dilemma timers, or quick time events there to distract you. And yeah, just plowing through these stages, doing everything you can to improve your time and climbing up that leaderboard is just so much fun. I did eventually find out you can perpetually slide on lava and probably water just by doing this, which is a little broken and made this stage a lot less fun to time attack for the first 30 or so seconds, and I do wish there were ranks here. I've been playing a lot of Marbled Up Ultra lately, trying to get all those diamond ranks, and that game's ranking system really pushed me. It would have been nice if this game did something similar to that. But besides those two things, this is basically a perfect game to me when I'm playing like this. I highly recommend anyone to try this out if you haven't already, it's so fun.
I talked a bit before about the level themes in this game, like in the bathhouse and the library worlds. I think those levels were a good example of the game's art direction at its best, since those level themes were more unique compared to other levels that fall into more tropey platformer cliches, like the desert world or the ice world. That's not to say those levels were completely boring though. I think in general Penny has a fun art style that still makes these more cliche levels visually interesting. The colors are vibrant and there's usually some kind of personalization going on, making each level feel part of a cohesive world, mostly thanks to the denizens we see sprinkled throughout the levels, who I thought had fun character designs. Overall, while I wouldn't say Penny has a super unique or notable art style, it fits the tone of the game and stands out enough to not feel totally generic, which, according to an interview with Christian Whitehead by the channel Video Game Storytime, is exactly what the team was going for, since they viewed Penny as sort of a stepping stone for future 3D games to come and didn't want to worry themselves with having some crazy unique art style.
This will obviously vary from machine to machine, but the PC port runs really well for me, despite my PC being probably lower mid-range at this point. I can play this game at a locked 180 FPS 1080p just fine. I obviously can't show a frame rate that high on YouTube, so here's Steam's little frame counter if you doubt my words for some reason. It's obviously far from a demanding game, but I was pleased I was able to play at a frame rate that high so consistently regardless. Oh, and it runs perfectly in the Steam Deck too. I mean, of course it does, I'm just bringing this up because I am very, very giddy about owning this still. It's so cool, I love this thing so much. I did notice some scores rack up much slower in the Steam Deck compared to my PC, so let me check. Oh, yep, it's a refresh rate thing. They should probably fix that. From what I've seen, the Xbox Series S and X and PS5 versions run really well, running at 4K 120 FPS, which is really rare for console games. The Switch version, however, is always the interesting one, and thankfully someone here has played that one.
So unlike Brendan, who, as he said, played the game on PC, I played the game on my Nintendo Switch, which, as most people know, doesn't exactly have the same technical capabilities as other consoles and computers out there. So let's talk about that. The Switch version of this game has two modes, one that focuses on overall presentation, the quote-unquote quality mode, and another that focuses specifically on the game's performance, the quote-unquote performance mode. The game is set to quality mode by default, so that's the mode I played for most of the game. Honestly, I can't recall having any issues with frame rate or stuttering even when I was playing handheld, although to be fair, I'm not the most perceptive when it comes to that sort of stuff. Unless a game is struggling like Breath of the Wild in the Korok Forest, I don't usually notice this thing much.
I'm admittedly not the best at that either, but after looking at her footage, I can say the Switch version seems like a solid port. If you're not at all picky about this kind of thing, you'll probably be more than content with this port. The quality mode seems to be a very consistent around 30 FPS at 1080p, and the performance mode aims to be 60 FPS also at 1080p. And it normally does achieve that frame rate, but it does dip down into around 30 during some sections and some levels. I'm going to regurgitate some of the same info in Digital Foundry's reports because I obviously have limited experience here. Apparently the performance mode just drops anti-aliasing still being in 1080p, which is probably why this game dips so hard in some spots. However, you can get a much more consistent 60 FPS by dropping the Switch's resolution to 720p in the settings. I had no idea that could even impact how games render. I'd say just take the quality mode for the lower but more consistent frame rate unless you're okay with constantly going into the Switch's settings to change the resolution. Aside from the obvious problem of performance mode opting for 1080p, which it probably shouldn't, the Switch port seems really good. There's more to this port that might be worth knowing before you buy it if you really care, but I'd say go watch the Digital Foundry video for that. Along with some other really cool technical stuff. It's a really good video, I'll link it in the description. But yeah, whatever problems the Switch port has should be pretty easy to ignore for most people out there.
What was hard to ignore though were some of the glitches, like clipping into walls, which I sadly don't know if I have footage of or not, but definitely happen now and then. What I do have footage of though is a pretty major glitch that occurred during the second boss battle. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but it happened twice in a row, so I think there might be a specific area on the ship or a series of movements that trigger this. It wasn't the greatest to deal with, but at least it was the only major glitch I encountered in my playthrough.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this game being a bit glitchy from others. I have an even crustier recording of a glitch that also happened to me when I was playing this game on my Steam Deck, where I just clipped into the ground and I tried desperately to wall jump out of it, and I just couldn't. Another time during a time attack run in Lawberry 2, the camera freaked out when I was trying to pull this thing. I also had a time where the Wrecking Ball yo-yo launched me, but I couldn't find the footage anywhere, so just trust me on that, I guess. Other than that, my experience mostly has been limited to just clipping into smaller objects and Penny responding to terrain in weird ways. I don't think the game is overly glitchy, but it is a bit unpolished, even months after the release. I played this game for over a day of my life at this point. Everything I mentioned is about everything that happened to me, so at least to me, it wasn't that bad. But your experience may vary.
I want to discuss the music of Penny's Big Breakaway since the composer is a name I definitely recognized when the trailer for this game was first shown. T. Lopes, the guy who started off making Sonic remixes and original fan songs only to then get hired by Sega themselves to work on the soundtrack for Sonic Mania, which, if you somehow don't know, is absolutely amazing. And years later, here he is again, having worked on the soundtrack for Penny's Big Breakaway along with Sean Bialo, Jameson Sutton, and Christian Whitehead. Oh goodness, is he one of those jack-of-all-trades type creators that are just like good at every single thing they do? Anyways, the soundtrack is pretty good. I wouldn't say the melodies are as catchy as Sonic Mania's, but then again, that's a hard standard to beat. That's not to say Penny doesn't have any memorable tunes though. Some of my favorite tracks include Penny in a Pinch, Puppet Pioneer, Chromatic Oscillation, and Wind It Up, Yo. The last one is great. I'm a sucker for end credit themes that are a mashup of previous level themes, which is why we won't be spoiling it. If you want to hear it, you'll have to earn it for yourself. Overall, the game has a solid soundtrack. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing the same team work on the music for future Evening Star titles.
Alright, just popping in to say that I do love the songs Jules picked here, but I gotta shout out the true best song of the game, Palace Sneak Time Swing. I know she disagrees with me on this, but I like this song more than anything in Mania. It is so good. Okay, a little quick story to tell you. Over the course of creating this video, we talked over Google Docs a couple times. Yeah, we did what it sounds like. And one of the times she told me that she has seen the light. Palace Sneak Time Swing confirmed best song in Penny's Big Breakaway.
Like a good platformer should, in my opinion at least, the boss battles maintain some level of cohesion with the game's primary mechanics. I know I talked about the second boss battle having that annoying glitch, but besides that, it was a battle I found quite enjoyable. During the World 2 levels, you learn how to use your yo-yo to roll across water and maintain your speed by going through these hoops. During the boss, you're presented with the same mechanic, having to speed your way across large stretches of water while also going through hoops and also dodging attacks from the ship captain. It has a nice challenge to a mechanic we've already been practicing. Other boss fights take an even more level-like approach, literally just throwing you into what is essentially a speedrun, like the level 1 boss that has you running away from a giant ball of penguins Indiana Jones style, and another that has you race against a puppet version of Penny.
I really like those bosses that are essentially just levels, but those aren't all of them. Like I keep on saying, Penny is at its best when it focuses on movement, and the more traditional bosses obviously don't really allow for that, like at all. Some of them do use the yo-yo mechanics in interesting ways, I guess, but I still don't have all that much fun when I actually play these. They're not awful or anything, most of them are very short and easy, so no Sonic Superstars like bosses here, oh my god, thank you. But they are a bit of a sour point for me. I do really like all their designs though, and the Judge Rufus boss is really creative, making you grab his gavel to use it to break these chains and take off the weights on the court scale the fight itself is on. Again, not particularly fun, but I love the concept. The music tends to be really good in these too. Alright, now we're in spoiler territory. If you don't want to see the final boss and ending, go to whatever point you see on the screen in the video right now. Alright, Jules, I gotta ask you, do you, in this current moment, remember much about the final boss? Because I did not.
I don't. Not much, anyways.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's not awful, but it definitely is forgettable. The first phase is largely a retread of the previous Emperor Eddie fight. The second phase is kinda cool, but it's not interesting enough to justify being as long as it is, and the final phase is just kinda slow and boring. I love a lot of the spectacle in this fight, and even the song is great. I could really see this being a much more climactic final boss if it was just given more attention. Before I end this, I do want to talk about the bonus levels briefly. You get these little mini levels after buying them from this one part in the menu with showtime pieces. They're much stricter than any other level, having the tightest platforming in the game, and yeah, they're a lot of fun. Once again, they are short, but that makes them super fun to time attack. I didn't like this lava motorcycle one too much because I felt like it was almost luck-based if you were gonna get a nasty cycle with fireballs or not, but I really enjoy the rest of them for how much they challenge me compared to the rest of the game. Still not a lot, but enough. At least when you're trying to go as fast as you can and make all the shortcuts. To me, at least to me, that's when it gets really fun. I was hoping they'd make the last one a super tough gauntlet level, but I guess that's just not the direction they wanted to take it. Still, I like these. Oh yeah, as far as I know, the Denizen dilemmas don't get you anything beyond a higher completion in an achievement, so maybe skip those if you don't appreciate high numbers like me. I love this game. In fact, as someone who adores great movement in 3D platformers, I think this is one of the best 3D platformers ever made. I may have complained more than I would have liked to in this video, but almost everything I complain about literally does not matter in time attack mode. All the slower Denizen dilemmas, the quick time events, the bosses, none of them are even a factor in the mode I already established I believe is the best part of the game. It's such a fun time that's so infinitely replayable for how insane this movement is. So many have complained that Evening Star didn't go back to develop the new 2D Sonic, and while I do think Superstars has some serious issues, I just can't agree with that when we got this game instead. This is a far more than worthwhile trade-off for another 2D Sonic. I love those games deeply, but we have so many of them now, and this is such a unique and fun game that I can't imagine anyone else making. And yeah, I know Jules and I have been making constant Sonic comparisons throughout this video, but that's really only because Penny does a couple things that not many other games outside of Sonic does. But Penny is very much its own thing, and I absolutely love what it is.
I totally agree. This game has a really solid foundation and understanding of momentum-based gameplay that only a few people, like Christian Whitehead, would be able to create in a 3D environment. In the video game Storytime interview I mentioned previously, Christian Whitehead mentioned how important he felt it was for his team to refine the type of gameplay they wanted in Penny's Big Breakaway so that they could have a solid foundation for more ambitious 3D games in the future. Despite a few issues here and there, I really do think the team succeeded in their mission, and I'm excited to see what they're gonna release next.
And that's Penny's Big Breakaway, an excellent momentum and movement-focused 3D platformer that I really think everyone should try out. There is a free demo available, so Yeah, what are you doing? Like, literally no excuse not to. I do really encourage anyone to take the time to really get to understand the game's controls, because that's when the game really gets fun. Anyway, I really enjoy reviewing this game, both because I love the game itself and because I was able to do it with my wonderful friend, JustAnotherReviewer. She has her own channel where she makes some great videos, so I really recommend checking her stuff out.
Be careful with the compliments, Brendan. It might start getting to my head. But yeah, I had a great time playing Penny and collaborating to discuss this game in more depth. Thanks for having me over. Jules, signing off.
Well, thank you, Jules, for being here, and thank you everyone for watching. So, Brendan signing off.